I may have to start.
Oh,
Director Bettinger.
yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Board Superintendent's Governance Team Retreat. It's 5:30, so we are going to start the meeting. I would turn it over to Dr. Watts.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice President Bettinger, members of the board, staff, and team. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for being here as we take a step back. That's the purpose of a retreat, for us to certainly identify where we've been as an organization, for the purpose of knowing where we need to go. Now, I'm going to ask, let's see. Do I have, there we go, we have shared screen. Thank you, Melissa. Can everyone see the screen? Perfect. Again, welcome to our 2021 Board Superintendent Governance Team Staff Retreat. As you can see from the images that are portrayed, we are certainly one of the most diverse school districts, not only in the state of Washington, but certainly in the country. And it reflects certainly our Board Superintendent Governance team, our staff. We are also a group of individuals working to become a higher performing team. We have different backgrounds. We have represent different races, ethnicities, genders. And the notion of building a team is not an easy task. In fact, it takes effort and time and a willingness to do so. And so part of that opportunity is for us to be purposeful and intentional about the learning of an organization, as we have our newest board member, Director Beno. And anytime we have a new addition or even a subtraction, any new change to a team, we have an entirely new team. And that is the importance and the reason for our being here in this space today, to learn together, to listen together, to have an opportunity to reflect and communicate together for the purpose of improving our overall team performance. So I want to share with you the 4 goals that undergird our existence in Kent School District. They serve as the foundation. And there is a story certainly behind our goals. There are 4, as you see. Each one has a special and unique meaning, and certainly an important meaning for our purpose in certainly achieving our core business of teaching and learning and supporting those who teach and learn. So those 4 strategic goals, they drive our work. They drive our work and create a focus for our efforts toward accomplishing our mission. As we all know, our mission is defined as, and I appreciate our board's work and our community's work prior to my being here, our mission is very clear: successfully preparing all students for their futures. When I arrived in 2015, I did happen to have the opportunity to ask several questions. And one of the questions that did arise is, do we have a shared understanding of our mission statement? Do we have a shared understanding of what successful means, what prepared means, what all means, and what futures means, among many? Successfully preparing all students for their futures. That's our mission. Our mission is defined as why we exist. What's our purpose? And so if we ask ourselves that, our purpose is successfully preparing all students for their futures. We must truly understand what that means and what that entails. It also supports our vision. And while that statement is not necessarily as widely known in Kent School District, it is the answer to the question, how do we see ourselves into the future? The vision. Kent School District produces graduates who are globally competitive learners. Through equitable access to high quality academic, social, and applied learning, students will be ready to excel in college, career, and in life. That's our vision statement. That's how we see ourselves in the future. So while we know our mission, our vision, in this moment, our strategic goals, in order to get there, To prepare, goal 1 is supporting our students in our core business to be college and career ready, to raise the academic and social learning bar. Our goal 2 is to engage our community, students, staff, families, to ensure that two-way communication is meaningful, it's focused on equity and excellence. Goal 3, to create effective organizational systems, and ones that certainly reinforce our core values, 2 of which, equity and excellence, and certainly the third, community. And our goal 4 is to develop, recruit, hire, develop, and retain a diverse and premier, or in other words, a high-performing workforce. So these are strategic goals that didn't just show up. And we ask, how did we arrive? So let's take a moment to recall the significance of our 4 communities. In less than 3.5 years ago, this journey began in a very unique way. Not uncommon for school districts to have challenges with fiscal responsibility. And at the same time, we realized that there were some needs that we had to identify and correct in Kent School District. First among equals certainly was a financial challenge that showed up. Certainly that we had to adjust our practices in order to recover. These strategic goals support that. The strategic goals are now in our blueprint, our current and existing strategic plan. And essentially the initial phase of that plan, which began in 2016 through 2018, to a full implementation of our strategic goals and objectives through 2018 to 2021. If you think back to 3 years ago, it was April 2018, during some of our most challenging times with regard to operational and financial hardships. And I remember saying in a meeting that if we do not change our practices now, we can, instead of having tough choices today, we'll have even tougher times in the future. And those choices that we made were tough, they were hard, and they hurt the organization. There was pain felt. As a result of those changes, we had to downsize and right-size the organization and reduce our staff in many ways. That also allowed us to align our goals with our mission and our vision. Alignment of our strategic plan and our goals helped also to reorganize and restructure the organization, to move away from the notion of divisions, which identified a separateness or being apart, to creating communities, which implied that we were working together to get the job done. Changing departments, again, denoting apart from one another, to teams, those that report to members of who lead our communities. But as a learning organization, that is our core business, teaching with an emphasis on learning. We are continuously improving, that is certain. We are not perfect. I've said that before, and until I meet someone who is perfect, I know that we are not, and we are working to make perfect progress, however. But our goal as an organization in 2018 was to be leaner, certainly not meaner as an organization, and we were able to accomplish that. In many ways, we did our work to be lean. In some cases, we became too lean. And again, that is the opportunity for us, continuous improvement. When we recognize our challenges, how do we make sure that we are where we need to be? So there's a financial necessity component that is tied to our reorganization. There's also the must that we have. We have to make sure that our fiscal conservatism in our organization and our structure helps us with our decisions that we will maintain our ongoing focus on our core business of teaching and learning, or supporting teaching and learning. As we begin our community presentations, I want you to take a look at this picture and see the faces of those as a reminder of we are closer than we've ever been. We're not there yet, but it was literally a year ago today that our schools in the state of Washington were closed. We've often heard that school was closed. Well, that's not necessarily the case. While the school buildings were closed, school had to be reimagined. These are the smiles of faces of students who are excelling and doing well, feeling positive about their school experience. And yet there were also some faces that you can't see, where there were challenges and gaps that were widening, even before COVID. But student excellence is a balance of rigor. And we define rigor as that cognitive demand, that challenge of academic, social, and career readiness skills that we want for each and every one of our children, 26,000 whom we serve, and those who are pictured before you. I would like to thank in advance our team, our executive cabinet team, and staff who have helped to prepare our presentations this evening. There will be an opportunity for interaction through forums and some technology that is relatively low tech. But we want this to be an engaging opportunity to hear from you, for you to learn and to collaborate, and to, again, help us propel Kent School District further and farther as a high-performing school district that supports the needs of each of our students, staff, and families. Thank you. I look forward to our time together this evening and as day one, the first day of our second day on Thursday. In front of you, you see our agenda, teaching and learning overview, update, and discussion and reflection, followed by school operations and academic support overview, discussion and reflection as well. We'll have a natural break point, and then followed by our presentations of organizational effectiveness with discussion and reflection in each, including human resources, and then communications and public affairs overview and update. And then we will bring closure to this day with the board questions, discussions, and next steps for board superintendent governance team. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your learning. And we'll begin with Chief West, teaching and learning overview and update. Danelle?
Good evening, President Daniels, Vice President Bettinger, Board Directors, Dr. Watts and Ms. Howley. I am working on a new system. Thank you. Do I just click to advance to the next slide? Okay, just wanted to make sure. This evening, our presentation is really focused and designed to provide an overview of the work of the teaching and learning community and share what we've outlined as our roadmap for the next 5 years. So just to kind of share at this stage in the process, this is work that we are just beginning to launch and starting to kind of dip our toe into some of these pieces. So there's some high level information that we'll share this evening, and I look forward to the questions and comments that you may have regarding this work. So just to kind of revisit, who we are in teaching and learning. Our community supports inclusive education, and what you'll see in sort of the lighter boxes underneath each heading is just some of the key programs that are embedded in each of those teams. We also support multilingual education. As you can see, our curriculum and instruction team is really addressing some of those core sorry, I have little ones here coming in and out of the room. Some of our core programs and performing arts programs, in addition to some of our elective programs. We also include career and technical education. So if you are familiar with presentations or contracts or information that's been shared with the board previously, all of this should sort of look familiar to you when me or members of my team are prepared to share. So with this slide, to kind of set the context for how I want to frame what we share this evening, it really just kind of begins to represent the competing demands of a school system and the demands, pushes and pulls within the teaching and learning community. One of the drivers to our planning process was to help us navigate the multiple demands on our work and ensure our efforts are in support of overall improvement initiatives. Many of the items you see outlined on this slide aren't new. They're not novel ideas. It's really been a compilation of years of learning, starting, shifting, achieving, and a series of false starts. This is honestly a normal part of a dynamic organization, but it's also important for us to have a clear roadmap to ensure we continue to organize our resources toward a clear path to success. So what I'll share in our plan, it really outlines how we've prioritized our focus for each year and how we're planning to measure our success over the next 5 years. We are in our first drafts of this plan, and it's important that we have input from the board as well as input from each of our stakeholders to ensure this plan is viable and sustainable and can be implemented with success. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank you in advance for your contributions to this work. So just to kind of share how we identified our goals and objectives for the next few years, we started our process with a needs assessment. And a part of that needs assessment, it wasn't just sort of a one-time thing that was done and we kind of moved on. Over the last 3 years, we've been engaged in a series of processes where we've been regularly looking at our data. We've engaged in school visits, and we've kind of modified our process to really begin to hone in on some of the information that we really needed to have to better inform our work. We analyze the different types of inquiries and requests that we receive from schools on a regular basis. We've pulled information from our advisory groups, and some of the state or federal routine program or compliance audits has also helped inform our work. After that needs assessment and really looking at the information, looking at the data, looking at the anecdotal summaries from that work, we engaged in a gap analysis. And from that gap analysis, we kind of noted a few things that I kind of want to speak to, and what you'll kind of see identified in our goals and objectives for teaching and learning. One of the things, if you look at our data over the last few years, and I spoke to this a little bit the other evening, is that we're maintaining our performance levels across the years, and we're also at the same time maintaining some of those similar gaps in achievement. So that's something that we really we've really been digging into and trying to figure out what's going to be the best strategy to make sure that we begin to close some of those gaps. We also noted that there is school-to-school variance. That's not to necessarily mean that's a negative thing, but what we have noticed is that, the instructional expectations could look different at some of our sites. The implementation of district curriculum looks different depending on schools and levels. The models for intervention or MTSS structures, they all exist, but they all have a different kind of take and lens to it. And then there's variance in the level and degree of program implementation. Another takeaway from our needs assessments is that a lot of the requests that come into teaching and learning have really been focused on more of the operational, logistical types of support. Sometimes there's some financial or staffing needs that we need to address, but we don't have that same sort of demand for some of those instructional pieces, which is really where we would like to focus our work and really grow our support. And our takeaway for why that might exist, I'll kind of speak to a little bit later in how we've identified our goals. So where we are now is we're beginning the process of identifying strategies to address the gaps that we've identified. We're also planning to conduct this same process with each stakeholder group to help define and design our plans towards system coherence. And when I speak to system coherence, it's important to understand that it isn't approaching this work that we have an expectation to have cookie cutter schools. It really is around being able to define, is the work we're doing, does it move us closer to decreasing variability and performance from school to school, and ensuring that there's some consistent expectations across the system. There we go. So what I wanted to call out with this slide is just to kind of share how we've engaged in our planning process. First, it's nested in our overarching district goals and district core values. We've identified some core beliefs for our work in addition to commitments and priorities. And from there is where we really begin to define what our priority goals are. And for each goal, you'll see a series of learning objectives. A series of objectives that we're using to guide our work. Where we are now in our process is really matching our strategies and developing detailed action plans for the next 5 years. There we go. So what you'll see on the screen is our list of belief statements that we have for our community. And we really consider, in the way we've approached defining and identifying our belief statements, is that this is our gut check as we engage in supporting and growing our programs. Is what we're doing, what we're providing, what we're planning for, really helping us in honoring what we've identified as our core beliefs for teaching and learning. Growing for our beliefs are our key commitments to guide our work. And what you'll notice are sort of what's often referred to in education as the three-legged stool: curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So we've really added a fourth and fifth layer to this. And the way I kind of analogy that I use, instead of just a stool, we want the full chair with a nice sturdy seat, because we also recognize the importance in our commitment to relationships and designing coherent systems of operations. And excuse me, if you think about the information that we gathered from our needs assessment and some of the needs, excuse me, being driven from operational and logistical, that really gave us a push to really look closer at the systems and processes that we have established, and recognize that there is a need to kind of continue to do that work. So the 4 goals that we've identified, not to be confused with the goals that we have for KSD, but you can certainly see how they build from one another. Oops. Thank you. With our first goal, it's to develop and implement a guaranteed viable curriculum. Even in this work with my team, you know, there was certainly a rub with this particular goal because our team has done this work and has been engaged in this work over time. And each year we are getting closer and closer to refining and ensuring that the resources and curriculum that we provide is meeting the needs of our students. And it's important that we keep this as a primary goal because this is work that's never done. So when we look at goal 1, that really is the what. It's the what we produce, is the resources that we provide. For goal 2 is really where we begin to look at our instructional practices. Goal 2 is really the how. How do we expect staff, students to engage in the instructional resources? How do we expect instruction to be delivered in a way that's accessible to all of our students? Goal 3 is really around the evidence of that instruction and evidence of those efforts. And this is where we look at assessments and the data that comes from that. We're looking at progress monitoring data to ensure that we're mapping the work and achievements of our students along the way, and also adjusting as needed. And goal 4 is really what we've defined as our conditions for success. Goal 4 is that systems piece. It's the protocols, the procedures that we've established that eliminates the guesswork that schools might have in trying to find information or trying to access resources or knowing where to go or how to solve some common challenges or problems that emerge in schools. If we are having to build this every year, that means that we have to look at our system and make sure that that's tight so that that guesswork, it shouldn't be like a game in hide and seek for staff to be able to access those resources. So for each goal, we have a series of objectives. And for some of our goals, there are more objectives than others. So for goal 1, the key elements that I really want to call out with this goal is clarity of learning expectations, aligned appropriate resources based on data that's informed by our students' needs, and a drive for comprehensive professional development. And one of the things that we know is the biggest lever to changing practice to any school improvement initiative is high quality professional learning. And if whatever we expect our staff and students to know and be able to do, we have to provide the learning opportunities to help them get there. Here are some additional objectives for goal 1. And some of the things that you'll notice is that you'll see some of our programs called out very specifically in each of the objectives for goal 1. Goal 2, again, is our how. And this is where we've really focused on implementation, clarifying expectations for implementation of our instructional program. Again, you'll see comprehensive professional development called out in this work, and aligned expectations for students that's leveraged through evidence-based, culturally responsive practices. And where you see HITS, HIT stands for High Impact Teaching Strategies. Goal 3 again is the evidence of our efforts. So what's the evidence of impact? So goal 3 really begins to unpack and identify how we'll evaluate the impact and design and implementation, and ensuring that we are adjusting appropriately by applying that process of continuous quality improvement so that we're refining our work. Goal 4, and we've shared previously some of the updates with the dyslexia law that starts next year, but it was important for us to really take a close look at from a systems level, what is our structure for multi-tiered systems of support for academics? And when we look at goal 4, again, goal 4 are our conditions for success. What are the systems pieces that we need to address to ensure all of this other work could happen in a structured and organized manner? So I kind of consider goal 4 our housekeeping. And it's the housekeeping that's required to ensure our foundation is strong enough to navigate the range and degree of change that often comes our way. If I reflect on my 3.5 years at this point in Kent, I can think of some of the major hurdles that we've had to overcome. And one of the things about having strong systems or a strong foundation in place is that you're able to navigate those changes with ease. And by having strong aligned systems, we can focus more of our efforts on instructional supports rather than some of the operational supports that often require a lot of recreation and iteration. Here are some of the other objectives aligned with goal 4. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of systems pieces that we really want to tackle and clean up over the next couple of years. So just to, again, reiterate where we are in this process, I thought it'd be helpful. Oh, that's weird. Is to kind of outline our timeline. So in 1920 is when we really began to unpack all the information collected from the needs assessment. In the summer of 2020 is when we started that process of the gap analysis. This fall is where we really started the work of building our draft plan. And where we are right now, I thought it would be an ideal opportunity for our team to work through this process on a scale, looking at what do we need, how do we take these goals, what will we prioritize between now and fall of next year to really tackle the anticipated learning loss that we would expect students to have as a result of the pandemic. And so as a part of our pilot process, and to make sure that we're really comfortable and clear on the steps that we would walk and guide our stakeholders through, we're doing this internally as a team, and we'll have a draft action plan to share. And then in June is when we'll start that stakeholder review and feedback. And then our goal is to launch and start living our goals in the fall of 2021. So I know a part of your charge and the request that I have for the board is certainly kind of capturing your feedback on some of the things that was shared. And just some questions that I'd like for you to consider and how you respond and partner with us in this work. How does the work of the board support teaching and learning? What would you like to see in this plan that you didn't see? Like, what are some of the components that might not be included? Is there anything that you would change in this plan? Is there something that just doesn't sit right? And what questions can we answer about this plan that you might have? And I want to thank you for your attention. I know it was a lot of information in a short amount of time. And I think I am going to transition to the next presenter, but I'll call on my colleagues for support on what that next step might be.
Thank you, Chief West. Actually, we have a few minutes, and I'm going to put in the chat one of the ways that we wanted to maximize our time this evening and that we discussed as a team is giving the board time this evening within our time together an opportunity to capture, begin capturing at least your questions, and capture what you've learned and what questions you have, 2 different ways this evening. So Janelle, I think you still have control. If you could advance the slide. I'm actually going to put a link in the chat as well. And we have 2 questions for you beyond what you've seen you'll see questions in from some of our presentations as well that are more explicit, but really reflecting on what you've learned, and what more do you want to know? And in the chat is a link to a Microsoft form. And this will allow you to both in the moment capture some thoughts, but also time to go back, because we will provide the full presentation on your team site in SharePoint. Ms. Halley will help us with that so that you can look more closely at anything that went by maybe too quickly, or that you want to look more closely at, and then go back and share what you've learned or ask more questions, and not have to do it in the moment tonight in the short period of time that we have, but we'll leave that form up, that Microsoft form up, so that you can do that on your own time, and then we can get back to you. And that will be a good way for us to have some questions. And it does not violate OPMA. It is a single response form, so you can respond on your own time, and there's no opportunity for OPMA violations. So you can just do it at your leisure. If you want to take a moment to just silently reflect, or if there's any specific slide, we do have a few moments, but we want to also make sure that every community this evening has a chance to present while you're here, and you can see the slides and ask about specific slides before you are looking at that on your own time. And then we'll transition to our next community presentation. So we'll pause at the end of every community, but we will also make sure we leave time for discussion while we're in person here this evening. And if you want to take over control of the screen, or if you want me to click through for you. I notice if I barely bump my mouse, I have to be very careful with my elbow to not bump it. So I'll make sure I'm cognizant of that. I apologize.
I'm set to click on my own, so if you can just
not bump my mouse. Okay.
Let me know when you're ready. I'll start.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, and I'm not seeing anybody unmute. So I think if we're good, the board is okay, then we can move forward.
Great.
Thank you.
Before Israel begins, I just want to take a point of order and privilege. I did not remember if we mentioned it prior to bringing the meeting to order, but I know that President Daniels had a previously scheduled engagement, is not able to attend this evening, and let Ms. Howley know. Just wanted to make sure that was noted. Thank you for that.
Melissa, I am clicking, and so I'm just waiting for.
I don't see that you've taken over, so let's see. Here, I can do it here.
There you go.
Okay.
There we go. Excellent. Great. Thank you, Melissa. Vice President Bettinger, members of the board, Dr. Watts, and colleagues. It's my pleasure to now continue our presentation as the Community of School Operations and Academic Support. Before I get started, I wanted just to kind of give a little more context to some of the areas you're going to see, and that is my experience here in Kent. I have been in Kent for 20 years, had a little bit of a hiatus when I went to the Seattle School District as executive director of schools, but I have been a principal, exec director, director of programs, many of the programs I'm going to share with you today. I think it's important in that when I start to share some additional information, I'm also going to share some hopefully fun facts for you to be able to get a little more context in some of the areas that you're going to be experiencing and seeing today and hearing from. So that said, I'll go ahead and get started. A couple outcomes for my presentation today. The first is in front of you is who are we? School operations and academic support. I don't want you to get too, when you look at all the areas, it's going to look like a lot, and there is, but there is coherence to this. And I want to make sure that I share with you what specifically we do in each one of those areas, but more importantly, how we support our core business of teaching and learning. And as you just heard from Chief West, you heard the teaching and learning areas and a 5-year plan on kind of where we're headed with that area. We in school operations and academic support look at our role as supporting teaching and learning as our core business. Our main goal area that we engage is with parents, students, staff, community, two-way communication, and focused on equity and excellence. This graphic really is designed for our board to really get a look at. So what are all the different areas that are in and make up school operations and academic support? I'll start from the upper left with transportation services, moving clockwise with athletics and activities. We have capital planning, facilities maintenance. In that area, we've actually combined the two, led by our director, Mr. Dave Buzzard. And we'll talk a little bit more about that area. We have our Office for Learning Improvement. You had the opportunity to hear the facilitation of our two executive directors for learning improvement last month as they work with our principal leaders. Again, I'll share a little bit more as we move ahead. Student and family support services is another large area that I will talk a little bit more about, but that is the area that I actually spent time as a director and exec director and was very proud to return to Kent in 2016 to continue leading school operations and academic support in what I call my community, and that is Kent School District. And so you notice also in the center, we're grounded in our core values, equity, excellence, and community, emphasizing that we're supporting teaching and learning in what we do on a daily basis. I'm going to start with our Office of Learning Improvement. Again, you met our two executive directors for learning improvement a month ago when they facilitated. That's Patty Drobny and Dr. Christine Avery, who actually helped support our principal leaders in a variety of ways. More importantly, as you see in that first paragraph, they actually serve as the evaluators for our principals using our Association of Washington School Principals leadership framework. They've done a lot of work in that area and continue to lead and support our principal leaders in a variety of ways. That includes advocating for supporting the schools. They participate in the building activities, whether it be school improvement team meetings or other district level committees. They also attend many of the community events in those schools. So you can imagine that they are pretty busy as they're trying to meet the needs of their principal leaders and also trying to really get to know their schools. They also attend regular KEA labor management meetings along with our human resources team. They are, and I didn't, as I mentioned, I think I've mentioned it before, is that we've had 3 executive directors for learning improvement prior to moving into this school year. We have been operating with 2 since our this school year, and they have done a fantastic job in trying to keep providing the supports that you see in that first paragraph. They also provide professional development in different levels meetings, elementary, middle, and high. They partner with the communities, teaching and learning, and those communities you're going to hear from later. But I believe that the cross collaboration that they must do is so critical to the coherence, as you heard earlier today, and how we're trying to provide support for teaching and learning. They also provide support for school improvement, and you heard from 3 levels last month and principals they facilitate, and working with them. They do attend school improvement meetings from schools to help support those principal leaders. I want to move now to our Student and Family Support Services team, which is led by Executive Director Randy Heath. He has shared with you in a variety of different areas and different board meetings, but I wanted to kind of break it down into a couple of areas in terms of that Student and Family Support Services provides. The first one is our tiered systems of support. You heard earlier from Chief West the focus on multi-tiered systems of support from the academic perspective. Student and Family Support Services has been working for quite some time, since 2014, 2015, in trying to build the supports from a systems perspective to address the needs of our students from an MTSS-B perspective. And when I say B, I mean belonging. Some folks think of that as behavior. We look at it as belonging, and it is the social emotional learning side of it. You really can't separate multi-tiered systems of support by only working on academics. You need to be focusing on the needs of our students from the whole child perspective. And that's really one of the key areas that Student and Family Support Services works on. And they work in conjunction with the other communities, specifically teaching and learning. The types of supports in that next paragraph you see from our homeless population, foster care, our refugee student families that we address each year, our Native student population, and we focus on providing the supports from all the categorical funding that we receive. And those specific areas, the 2 largest areas, are Title I and our Learning Assistance Program. Director Van Godosselum has reported in her legislative updates, she's shared a little bit of what's happening around learning assistance programs and the dollars that are utilized to help support students that are not meeting standard or need supports from a social emotional learning perspective. So it encompasses the whole child. In addition, we have to follow state and federal statutes and guidelines around that particular funding, but most importantly around those items like HIB and also discipline or attendance. Those are areas that are continuing to support our schools with. Back to the categorical funding, there's quite a bit of state and federal guidelines in terms of the use of those dollars. You've heard Executive Director Rarick talk about basic ed funding. The categorical funding does not, I'm not sure how that happened. And Melissa, I know what you mean. There we go, sorry. The categorical funding is something that we have to follow state and federal guidelines on how we keep track of those dollars. And so to give you an idea, this is that fun fact that I was mentioned to you. In those 2 areas of categorical funding, there are over $17 million that we receive as of our last year's funding allocation. That's changed over the years depending on the allocations for state from federal government, but I wanted to give you just a number to know that we have to manage that. Student Family Support Services manage that those dollars in conjunction with our organizational effectiveness, teaching, learning, and human resource team. We have several staff that we purchase and we allocate through those dollars, and so it's important that we communicate closely and collaborate with our particular HR partners in order to make sure that we're utilizing the dollars the way we're supposed to, and we're reporting that on a regular basis. We use our iGrant system to be able to regularly identify how we're using the dollars, what we intend to use the dollars for, and also report on that on a yearly basis. So in addition, lastly, you see that our team also works diligently on our transfer request process. You heard from Mr. Heath recently in the last couple of meetings on some of the revisions that we've done on the procedure for transfers in order to help support our parents and students on a yearly basis. So that's our Student and Family Support Services team led by our Executive Director, Randy Heath. By the way, we also have been, I hope that's been helpful for you as a board. We try to share as much information we can during our weeklies, Dr. Watts Weekly, in order to kind of keep you posted on some of the great things that are going on, as well as other areas that you might want additional information. So Mr. Heath's team has been working closely on that. Another area that is part of Student and Family Support Services most recently is our Safety Services team led by Assistant Director Tim Kovich. The key areas for him with his team is providing our safety and security of all of our students, staff, and visitors. You see that we have 26 Safety Services staff members that support all of our students and employees in the Kent School District. 73 square miles that we must cover. And I have to put a little note for myself to say again, thank you to the board for, you may recall you approving our radio. We're replacing many of the radios that we communicate in order to provide that safety. The key piece to that, it's given us the infrastructure to be able to communicate with different channels and really with our law enforcement partners. So we really wanted to thank you for that. That's part of some of their work that they have been doing. In addition, they provide supports to all of our campuses. That includes our administration building, our transportation building. We have many buildings aside from our schools that they provide support to. In addition to that, part of the support that they provide is around our camera system or network system that really is a part of that safety piece. They do a lot of work with that as it relates to security and safety. And just to give you an idea on that, we have one individual that actually keeps those cameras running. If there's a problem, that's Mr. Eric Maurer, who works closely with Tim Kovich to make sure those cameras are up and running, because as you might know, there are oftentimes interruptions and we have to get cameras back up and running. Our team assists in emergency planning and response. There's lots of training that happens on a yearly basis at an academy that typically happens in August. That academy consists of a whole host of a number of trainings, and that we work with our law enforcement partners to help us with some of those training specific areas. In addition to that training, I mentioned multi-tiered systems of support as example of coherence. Mr. Randy Heath has worked with our safety services team on, so what do multi-tiered systems of support mean to safety services? What might we garner from the training that staff are getting and understanding about a framework to provide supports, not only for students, but to families? They also receive that training. We do the same training with our transportation team as well for our bus drivers. And I just wanted to point that out in that you begin to see the cross collaboration needs to take place as we support our core business of teaching and learning. Wanted to move to our athletics and activities team. This is led by Director Brian Smith, who joined us. I think he's in our second year now. And we're so happy to have Brian join our KSD community in that he worked closely with WIAA previously to coming to Kent, knows a lot of our coaches, knows a lot of our processes and procedures as it relates to athletics and activities. And you can imagine he's been pretty busy lately. And I wanted to, before I dig into the work, give a quick shout out to all of our ADs, coaches, everybody from custodians to our maintenance crews. Our first weekend was a very successful weekend of football on Friday. And on Saturday, it was an away game, but everything went well from a safety perspective as it relates to some of the things that we've been implementing around our pandemic. So real shout out to all of our teams out there that participate, and we'll continue to just get better at that as we move along. But back to athletics and activities, key responsibility for them really is around supporting our youth and putting together a process that includes interscholastic athletics and activities. Mr. Smith is very dedicated to being a student athlete, and he runs his own committees that he has with some of our high school students, and I think he started with middle schools around leadership and what that means to be a student athlete. And so he continues to do that work with them. We promote diversity in all aspects of our program by establishing those standards and practice to ensure safety and the welfare of all of our students. And some fun facts for you. We're continually focusing on, really it's a civil rights portion of all districts, and that is how many opportunities do you have for our girls and boys as it relates to activities? Our most recent consolidated program review was around civil rights, and that was one aspect. We have in our secondary schools, these are 4 high schools, we have 48 girls sports programs, multiple levels of play that includes dance and cheer as a couple of examples. For our boys, we have 40 sport programs, multiple levels of play, as I mentioned, and each school has different clubs and activity opportunities as well that they engage in. But I want to give you that from a fun fact perspective. For our middle schools, because we haven't started that yet because of our pandemic, but we certainly are looking at our middle schools to get them engaged, moving as we move forward to getting our students back in school. For middle school, we have 36 different girls sport offerings at multiple levels, as I mentioned, from high school, and 30 boys sport offerings, again, at different levels of play. Again, each of our middle schools have a diverse club and activity opportunities as well. In addition, Mr. Smith also manages those ASB requirements that come with those types of either ASB activities that relates to athletics. He also is responsible for all the coaching assignments that at our middle and high school levels. He works closely with our HR team as well when it comes to those types of things, because that's what we've been working on recently. As you know, starting in season 1, we're moving ahead for season 2 and 3. And Mr. Smith is busy right now working with our North Puget Sound League partners to talk about what's our next step as we look at spectators, allowing spectators into our different seasons 1, 2, and 3. And you'll hear more from him, as I mentioned, in our weeklies as we begin to share with you some of that work that's being done. So we look forward to sharing that. wanted to move to our transportation services department. You've heard from our director, Justin Dennison, who's also been doing a great job of keeping our team together in terms of our over 150 buses, as you've seen in some of the reports that we've shared with you, keeping them at tip-top shape. We can't just let those buses sit there, because we need to make sure we run them periodically so that when we are up and running, we'll get up and running again. Those buses are ready to go and are not going to cause us any kind of mechanical issues. And so our drivers have been coming in periodically to drive those buses. So they're on a rotation. And so again, their main charge, as you can see here, is providing transportation when we are up and running. Over 10,000 students that we do, transport on a daily basis to and from, as you can see. We must, as I mentioned, keep our students safe during that transport. They deal a lot with our different situations that come up with students, and it's where I mentioned earlier, Mr. Heath and his team has done trainings with our drivers on what kinds of supports or interventions may be needed, so that they are communicating with schools, not simply just working as a bus that transports to and from. They are part of also the schools. Our drivers become very close with our students, and so we want to make sure that we're working closely with our schools and our students, and they do a great job. You've heard that we've maintained and had some great audits, most recently from our Washington State Patrol. Our team does a fantastic job. Some of the fun facts that I wanted to share with you is 155 buses. We have 6 or 7 mechanics and 1 supervisor. They've been at this work since our closure. They haven't stopped. They've continued to maintain not only our buses, but all of our vehicles. That's one thing that may not have been known, but we also maintain all of our different vehicles in terms of a maintenance, from a maintenance standpoint. And so they do that. They also serve, as you saw earlier, this is where that cross collaboration of communities with student and family support services, the routing that they do. They route for our homeless or McKinney-Vento students who qualify. They route for out-of-district transportation for IE students. And they route for any special programs that are out there that they also have to do. And we again thank you for the support that the board has given us over the years in maintaining our fleet, as well as making sure that we keep our team from a safety standpoint and training standpoint up to speed on everything that they need to be able to do that. By the way, I know we're working toward getting our students back into school. They've been working closely with teaching and learning, really every community. And they are just really excited to really continue to do the work in a safe manner. And they are busy implementing those safety standards because we are about supporting teaching and learning and supporting those safety pieces that are going to be implemented at the schools. They are also following through on their buses when they get on the bus and when they get off the bus. And so again, under the leadership of Mr. Justin Dennison, they've done an excellent job in that area, and we look forward to continuing to do that. Moving to our capital planning and facilities and maintenance under the leadership of Mr. Dave Buzzard, I wanted just to share, just as you can see in the first paragraph, I won't read that to you, but one of the key pieces that I wanted to share with you is from a bond and levy perspective and the dollars that we have been working on projects. Just as a reminder, the 2006 bond, which has about 5 or 6 remaining projects that we're still working on. from our 2016 bond, we have smaller, but still a wide variety of projects, but 120 projects that are going on. They range from a dollar perspective, just a fun fact, everywhere from about $15,000 to $46 million. And so we've come to you often with those things that are happening around these areas, but I wanted just to bring that up. And then additionally, our 2018 levy, over 300 projects ranging from $5,000 to $4 million on each one of those projects. So you can imagine that team has been really working hard in those areas so that we are meeting the needs of our committee who we're utilizing the dollars with the promises made and promises kept, as Mr. Butters has often said in his presentations to you. That team, fun fact, that team is made up of 5 different team members. So yes, 5 different team members. And I've been to several school districts that I've worked in, and that team is very small, but they are mighty. They are outstanding. With our director in capital, Dave Buzzard, he has 1 planner directly working on about 58 different projects and keeping tabs and track of them. We have also 2 project specialists that support all projects, and they work to obviously keep things on pace in terms of being completed. And if there are any other issues and things, they also work on that with the support of Mr. Buzzard. And then we have our office manager, which I always say is our glue that holds that whole area together in capital planning. And she has done a fantastic job there. And she is the one responsible for a lot of the what you see in board briefs, what you see in the updates that we try to get you. That's something that we have. So again, that's a team of 5. We're looking at adding. We have 2 unfilled planner positions that we want to add, and that's just for the additional projects that are coming up as we complete our 2 schools that you know about that we are opening in fall of 21. I wanted to say that we're well on our way to completing that on time after meeting with Mr. Buzzard, and I too take a look at those schools as those projects as they move along, but they're looking very good. Wanted to shift to the next paragraph on facilities and maintenance. We have Assistant Director, Mr. Gordon Cook, who you've heard from, and he does an outstanding job. You can see that operationally, there are building leads that lead all the 42 sites to keep them clean, safe, appropriate, of course, operationally, and so that our settings are conducive to learning. That is key. They do preventative maintenance and tasks. These are our custodians that provide ongoing support in our buildings because they are our first line of support when you think of something that goes wrong with the building. I know that you received in the weekly information on our HVAC systems as an example. By the way, we're going to keep coming back to you with updating the document that we shared with you on filters and our different systems that we have. But it's back to our custodians. They're our first line who set the air exchange levels, who monitor and take a look at all the filters that are needed and required in that system. We mentioned that in the system that we have a recommendation from our CDC and Department of Health in terms of filters. Not all of our systems can take some of the high level of filters that are needed. And so our custodians monitor those frequently, including our air exchange systems. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about the work that they do in supporting a teaching and learning environment that we're going to need to not only for getting our kids back to school, but really maintaining them moving forward. The other piece is around maintenance. Just to give you a fun fact, we have about 718 acres of actual grounds that we take care of. About 217 of those acres need to be mowed or maintained in some way, shape, or form. We have, as I mentioned, Assistant Director Gordon Cook, 2 supervisors, a strand leader, and we have about a staff that make up about 30 maintenance staff. That includes grounds, boiler / mechanical, electrical, plumbing, including HVAC systems. We have specialists that is their role, but they have to work together on maintaining those systems in each school. And I can't say enough of the work that's being done in our and has been done and will continue as we look ahead in our district and continue to grow, because I do believe that we will be doing that. One of the pieces that I also wanted to share here is we're wanting to come back to you as a board to really do I think Director Van Godassel has shared before that, getting updates on our capital projects, how we're doing, and there are other areas like reports that I know that you're interested in. And so we'll continue to utilize our weekly. And as we have said earlier today, we're anxious to hear from you so that we could provide you the information that might be helpful. So I'm hoping that I was able to, again, to kind of wrap things up. Who are we in school operations and academic support? And how do we support our teaching and learning community, which is our core business? And I know that I've used probably more time than I probably was allotted, but I really wanted to get that as much information out as possible. So the last slide I have for you is really, what's it mean for us? It is, I won't read that to you, but really creating those learning spaces that really, it's not just about, keeping our carpets clean and that. There's so much more to that. They actually engage with our students and families in a way that I think is really, really helpful. And I know that school improvement teams really rely on our teams that make up our transportation, our facilities and maintenance, our athletics. They rely on them because they're a part of the family in a school that kids actually look to. And it's just exciting to continue to do the work that we're doing in cross-community collaboration. That's that second bullet. I can't say that enough. It's so critical to the success that I know we are striving for in the Kent School District in the name of school improvement. And then lastly, maintaining those safe and orderly day-to-day operations. So thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Chief Ella. So appreciate it. I know you have a lot of teams in your community, so it's a lot to cover, and we needed to make sure you had the time to cover it all. And so with that, we definitely have time for 1 or 2 questions or time to get back into your form and go to what you've learned or anything that you, questions that you have about SAOS. That you didn't hear or that you want to know more deeply about. If you want to start recording your questions now, want to make sure that you can get into your form. But again, we'll also have time at the end of our presentation as well, when all of our communities have had a chance to provide overview and updates on all of the work happening currently in KSD. We will have that open discussion time at the end of all of our presentations. So I'll pause just to see, check in, how we're doing. I'm not seeing, I can check the chat now. I didn't want to take away from the, okay, just a couple of thank yous. So I'm going to take silence as okay to move on. So we've actually also scheduled good professional learning. Want to be mindful of sit and get time. So we also want to make sure that we're mindful of the evening time. We're together for 3 hours this evening. So we've scheduled a short 5 to 10 minute break so that you can stretch your legs, get some fresh air, bio break, get some water. So we'll encourage you to walk away from your computers, rest your eyes. Many of us have been doing this all day long. And even if you haven't, please take a moment to go get some water, or take some time to work on your questions now. And then we'll come back looking at our clocks. We're right on schedule at 6:55, and we'll resume our learning together. So thank you so much.
you want me to say that we are back from our break? Thank you, girl. And I will turn it over to whomever is next.
So thank you, Vice President Bettinger. I believe we are moving into goal 3 and can get right into the presentation. So as the slide says, I'm proud to be goal 3. I say that to my team often and always representing that. So we are organizational effectiveness. We are aligned with goal 3 of our strategic plan. And we, like school operations and academic support, are comprised of several distinct teams that provide the support for Kent School District. And so I always describe the work that we do in organizational effectiveness as being the supporting cast members of KSD. So it's very clear, and I talk about it sometimes like a performance. And so it's clear that teaching and learning is our star. And I would describe the work of organizational effectiveness as all of the background things that allow the star to be the star. So you can't have that without the infrastructure supports, and that's what we provide. And so what you see on the screen are all of the teams that are comprised in organizational effectiveness. And we'll start by talking a little bit about each of those. Typically in an ordinary school year, a lot of the supports that organizational effectiveness provides are unseen and definitely, I would say, unnoticed because those supports are typically not very forward-facing in a way that people would explicitly think about in terms of operations of a school or a school day. One of those is nutrition services. And I think that probably up until about a year ago, this time, nutrition services might have been one of those teams that was taken for granted that children eat or how they are fed throughout a school year or during a school day. And so in a typical year, we are feeding approximately 12,000 students a day. During our campus closure, we've continued to do that and been pretty close to what our typical meal provisions are like. And we've been able to do that with support from other teams. In addition to providing the standard breakfast and lunch for students, they also provide fresh fruits and vegetables, snacks to after school programs, as well as a robust summer program. And we would not have been able to exist in the past year without support from other teams. So although Chief Vela just said it, we are thankful to our Teamsters, which are our transportation services group, and another community, as well as some of the other supporting communities within organizational effectiveness. And I'll get to those in a few minutes as well. So I don't think I can go backwards. I apologize. So the screen before this said print shop, and I don't want to skip print shop in this. So thank you. So print shop is they provide the printing services across our district. So in addition to some of the mailings that go out to families and communications, they do our graduation programs. They provide supports, even during our closure in a typical year, they provide academic supports, flashcards, other activity printing for schools at their request. During our closure, they've continued to be active. They also support our mail function, meaning that they have been delivering and disseminating the school's mail during our closure, and do some of those mail services for the district when we mail out things like report cards. All of that goes through our print shop. And most recently, they just completed our class of 2021 window signs for our graduates while they're at home and they're remote learning, so that they can still celebrate even though we're not together in person. In addition to that, they provide support to the system as well. So even our staff mailings, things like W-2s and those types of things come through our print shop. So they provide a myriad of services related to the work, as well as they do etching and engraving on our district awards and plaques. So that's our print shop team. So the next chunk of our organizational effectiveness team, it comes under a larger group. And so it's data services and support is the first part of what we call our DARTS team. And so that's where we comprise some of our technology infrastructure pieces, and that's broken out into separate groups. And one of the first groups there is data services and support. And most would know them as the supporting team for our student information system, but it goes beyond that. So they also support connections with OSPI and our educators and making sure that they have access to that system to maintain their certifications. And keeping their professional credentials updated. They monitor and support with OSPI and making sure that transcripts and those pieces are done. The grading pieces that happen for our students that go through their report cards also happen with support from this office. So then we have the A in DARTS, and that's assessment. Our assessment team monitors, of course, and manages our assessment work. So our formative assessment work around iReady and our state required assessments around Smarter Balance. And in addition to that, one of the things that the assessment team also manages is our graduation processes from the perspective of ensuring that our graduates have met the requirements and that gets certified in OSPI. That actually happens through a role that the state calls the DAC, and that's the District Assessment Coordinator. So they bear the responsibility of also ensuring that those pathways have happened, or in years when we have a waiver opportunity, that work also moves through the assessment office. Then we have the R in our DARTS team, and that's research. And our research team has been responsible for the advancing kind of our data literacy and our data utilization in the district. So advancing those dashboards that we see, making sure that our schools, as well as our supporting the other teams and communities across the district, have access to the data that they need, and that works twofold and in partnership with other teams in organizational effectiveness, like the data services team, ensuring that the data that we have in Skyward is accurate and can be useful to help us make data-informed decisions across the district. So next we have our T, which are actually two teams in this group. So there's technology support and there's technology operations. And this group is what one part of the group that we've seen most recently during our COVID closure has been that technology support team. They are the customer support. They are the problem solvers when we have technology issues. They've always existed in this role and have been a huge support to our schools and to our staff when our campuses are open. Some of them are actually typically housed and assigned to school buildings providing that support. But in closure, it's definitely been an all hands on deck providing that support across the district. And the other side of this T team is technology operations. And they are truly the behind the scenes piece of this work. So as we talk about adding new hardware and new software technologies and keeping our infrastructure system running. So when we have issues, for example, with networking and network services, it is our technology operations team that provides that support for us there. And last but certainly not least are the S in the DARTS team, and it's twofold as well. So there's innovation, strategy, and performance. So they're the S is strategy, and they provide a larger kind of systems look and support for organizational effectiveness, looking at procedural supports around our digital learning strategies, around our work with the graduation movement. This group is actually managing and is responsible right now for our Gear Up supports, which supports a cohort of students from middle school through high school and beyond to give them additional supports for being college and career ready. And then the other component of our strategy, our S in DARTS, is digital learning. And the digital learning team, they partner with the strategy piece. And again, they provide that instructional technology piece. This is actually where our teacher librarians receive the majority of their support. They fall into the digital learning team space, and a lot of our team members here support that group directly in their infrastructure needs and professional development needs as well. And then I apologize, I think I may have clicked too quickly through. The last one group that I may have missed early on was our finance team, our financial services team, and they are composed of several groups. And so we have what people think of as our traditional kind of expenditure cycle. So we have our budgeting team, and we think of how we plan to spend our money. We have our accounting team, meaning has it been attributed appropriately once we've made those expenditures and purchases. And then we have our distribution services and purchasing side of the house. And that deals with our vendor contracts, our distribution services support staff, also ensure that the purchased goods actually make it to the local school or the other teams and offices throughout the district who have made those purchases. Our distribution services team is also another team that's been small but very integral in the support of our meal service plan during closure. We've leveraged their support as well in ensuring that meals are getting out to our families, well, to our students and families during this closure. But I would be remiss if I did not include that team. I did not mean to skip that slide, but I wanted to acknowledge the supports that they provide as well. And so that is organizational effectiveness in a nutshell. We are, like I said, definitely a supporting cast member to this work. We take that work and that support very seriously. And as always, we are proud to be Goals 3 and proud to be the backbone of KSD.
Thank you, Dr. Harmon. And yeah, I know it's very touchy when you're sharing one PowerPoint on Zoom, so we all appreciate your patience. But we are trying to do this quickly also so that we can make sure that there's time for discussion. But like I mentioned before, everyone on the board will have access to the full presentation through SharePoint, so that you can go back through too if you have any questions or if you want to revisit it. So we do have a few minutes. If we want to pause now, if there's anything you wanted to ask Dr. Harmon before we move on to our next community presentation. And I know we're switching controls as we do this, so I'll give Dr. Berenger a moment before we switch over. Otherwise, we can keep moving on. And then we'll open to questions at the end of our presentation as well. I'm not seeing any chat, so I'm just checking. Okay. I'm going to go back on mute. Wade, I have to take control just for a second so I can mute myself.
All right. Good evening, Vice President Berenger, members of the board, Dr. Watts, colleagues. Appreciate the opportunity this evening to share with you a little bit about human resources, the work that we do, the important work we do, and how we support our core work, which is teaching and learning. So I'm going to drive you through our presentation this evening. Again, I think it's important to start off and ground us back in our core values of equity, excellence, and community, which leads us into my first slide, talking about how our HR beliefs are aligned to our core values. Our goal 4, as Dr. Watts stated early in his presentation, is to recruit, hire, develop, and retain a diverse and premier workforce. There's a lot in that goal. Each one of those words is critically important to the development of each and every one of our employees that we hire and bring on board as a member of our KSD family. So a little bit more detail to that is to ensure we hire and retain talented, high-performing staff with embedded job or staff support systems, with high-quality professional development, to continuously build instructional, and I added leadership capacity, because some of the work that you're going to hear tonight that we're doing in HR to support not only teaching and learning, but all of our employees, is that building that leadership capacity by increasing our professional development opportunities for our employees so they can grow not only in their own current role, but also see opportunities for advancement within our organization. As an HR community, we spent time at the beginning of this year developing and working on our belief statements and our commitments to the Kent School District. So our beliefs that you're about to hear are firmly embedded in our core values of equity, excellence, and community. So our work in HR is critically important to the work that all other communities do in our district. And we believe as HR, all employees are important and valued. That sense of belonging is critically important for our employees. Every single person needs to feel like they belong, and that's important. That drives our work in equity. We believe in the importance of being reliable and accountable, prompt, and treating all employees with dignity and respect. It's really important that our policies and procedures are consistent, fair, free of bias, and ensure an equitable experience for all. Excellence, our belief in excellence. We believe in hiring and retaining a diverse and premier workforce, stated right there at the end of our goal number 4. A workforce that is representative of our community, our diverse community that we serve each and every day here in Kent and our neighboring municipalities. By providing exceptional customer service that is responsive and solution focused, we will lay a foundation through the support of all of our adults for ensuring the success of all of our students each and every day. And again, that's our core work. That's our teaching and learning piece, is what are we doing in HR to make sure that all of our adults are equipped with the skills and the abilities to ensure that our students are getting the very best in those classrooms every day. And then our last belief embedded in our community core value is that we believe that human resources has a unique position to model a climate of community that conveys positivity and inclusiveness to our staff, families, and visitors, recognizing the diverse background and perspectives within KSD. That is a mouthful in and of itself, but what it really says is that it's our job as the heart of the organization in HR that we model what we expect and what we can support our communities and our schools in when it comes to hiring our employees and supporting our current employees. And of course, building trust with our employees, our labor partners, and community members allows us to promote a deep sense of unity or ownership or commitment and grow our relationships. And this is evident right now currently with our meaningful collaboration that we're having with our labor partners throughout the bargaining process, which I'll speak to a little bit later. All right, our work that supports teaching and learning. So our community, our HR community and our teams, as Chief West and her team's hard work she shared earlier, and Chief Vela and Dr. Harmon just mentioned, we are here to support that critical work in teaching and learning. We have 4 teams, which have multiple teams within those teams, but we have employment support, human resource operations, program and professional development, and our legal and labor team. So specifically, we'll just jump right into our employment support team. So this is where the recruitment, the hiring, the onboarding, and the retention work takes place within this team. Of course, we drive our recruitment plan based on a comprehensive and data-driven recruitment plan is what we use to drive our recruitment. And our onboarding, which allows us to develop and implement, administer new employee orientations for all employee groups, then also allows us to retain our new teachers and support staff for all buildings as well as central office. Currently, we're working on creating some intentional affinity groups moving forward into the 21-22 hiring season. That's something that we felt as a HR team that we need to do better at, as well as beef up our stay and exit interview process, ensuring that we get quality feedback from all those employees that are currently employed in the Kent School District on why they stay and why they love being in KSD. And any employees that choose to leave KSD, wanting to find out about their experience and what we can do better to support new employees as we bring new employees to KSD. We also support applicants and new hires through proctoring the clerical testing, fingerprinting, all the badge pictures, all the new hiring documentation, making sure everything's in compliance. We work one-on-one with each and every person that we bring through the hiring process. We provide support to the building administrators and staff regarding employee concerns, which may be through the complaint process. It may be through a phone call or an email asking for support and guidance in a particular area. We also support through our corrective action, which are consequences that may be administered through the investigative process. And then we, of course, ensure compliance and mandatory staff training. So safe schools, as well as additional trainings, of which a majority of our leadership in KSD has been a part of, at least 3 or 4 of them this year, in and around harassment, sexual harassment, intimidation, bullying. So that's an important part of our employment support team. In addition, we provide evaluation support to all KSD leadership. That includes timelines, templates, documents, tracking and ensuring compliance with those timelines, assisting with plans of support. So if we have employees that supervisors have deemed needing additional support, then we support our supervisors through writing of plans of support based on the contract language of that particular member, as well as making sure that we're being respectful of their due process rights. And then, of course, our reporting to OSBI, which is something we do every single year with our evaluations. Our sub-services team, again, we're actively recruiting constantly, and this is a different time during the pandemic and the remote learning process. It is different than if we were in person. But again, actively recruiting and hiring, trying to onboard, managing our teacher, paraeducator, clerical substitutes through orientations, ongoing training opportunities and support. This is something as we get ready to transition to our in-person learning that again, we are circling back to and making sure that we have a cohort of not only guest teachers, but paraeducators and clerical staff as substitutes that are ready to help support in time of need as we transition here shortly back to in-person. Of course, we're responsible for managing absences for all permanent employees, including placement of substitutes. We work with 30 plus colleges and universities to place our student teachers that we have each year. And we partner with our student family support services on our employee wellness program, which we just did a presentation a couple weeks ago in our leadership team, really focusing on the support of our staff and what staff may be going through in regards to the pandemic. Another important team on our HR community is our HR operations. These are kind of the behind the scenes, the workhorses in a lot of areas in and around staffing. So this team focuses on serving all of our K-12 buildings as well as our central office employees. So they touch every single employee in the district, which is almost 4,000 employees. They work with they work to develop and implement all certificated and classified basic education staffing models. And of course, then they maintain those staffing allocations for all of our buildings and communities. Right now, we are actually in the process of putting together our building allocations. We just went through our administrative allocations for our school buildings. We're wrapping up our basic education allocations based on enrollment and several other factors for our buildings, which will take place here in the next couple of weeks. And we're also currently we're working on at central office level, our new position and reclassification process. So we're in the thick of things right now for staffing. And again, we're talking about 4,000 employees or nearly 4,000 employees that we're supporting in that role. And to do a majority of that work is our HR generalist team. We have 8 amazing ladies who work extremely hard every day, go above and beyond to make sure they're supporting their schools as well as their communities, posting, hiring positions, trying to take off any of the stress and anxiety off of our building leaders, as well as our central office community leaders, and any employee who contacts them asking questions about salary, salary placement, personal leaves of absence, their certification, any separation or retirement pieces. Our HR generalists handle all of those pieces every day with a smile on their face, because again, a majority of our focus is customer service. Our payroll team, another important role. Everyone likes to get a paycheck at the end of the month. So our payroll team not only processes accurate payroll, but they spend a good deal of their time supporting all employees in researching, answering questions around pay, retirement, withholdings, etc. So that's a really important team as well. And then of course, last but not least, our employee benefits team, which right now their sole responsibility is the SEB. So our School Employees Benefit Board, as we transitioned last year into this has still been a work in progress for our employees as well as our team. But it's been an important one that they are managing quite well and supporting our staff as they understand the inner workings of SEB and the impact that it may look different than it did previously on previous benefit packages. Our benefits team also is the manager of our district employee assistance program. So staff and employees within the district that need some outreach and opportunity for assistance, they would reach out to our employee benefits team and we would be able to support them through our EAP program. Professional development or program in professional development is very large. There's a lot of things going on in program and professional development. I alluded to earlier, when you think about our goal number 4, the word develop specifically jumps out at me, and that specifically fits right in here with our program and professional development team, starting with teacher and leadership development. So we have several things going on in our district right now as far as support, new principal and new district leadership, our leadership administrative cadres meet every other week with support from our staff on program and professional development, bringing in various speakers from each of our communities to help support their growth and development as they become new and experienced leaders within the Kent School District. We've got our Principal Intern Academy, our Leadership Academy, PILA, that meets on a regular basis with Kathy Landowski, our Director of Program and Professional Development, leads our administrative interns through that on a bi-weekly basis as well. And of course, we then have our new teacher and new principal mentorship programs, which we have mentors, both our teacher mentors, and then our principal mentors who support of course, our teachers and our new principals or principals in their first 3 years, and our teachers formally in their first year and informally in their first 2 years. And of course, teacher induction, and then our nationally board certified teachers as well. Grants. We can't do a lot of this work based on the professional development budget. So we have access to grants through writing grants. And so a lot of different grants support the work that we do in professional program and professional development. So we have access to grants to support TPEP, which is our teacher and principal evaluation program. And then we've got teacher and principal trainings that I spoke to above. A lot of those are funded by grants. Our principal mentoring program, as well as our fundamental course of study, which I'll share with you here in a second, for our paraeducators. So again, lots of grant funds coming through program and professional development to support this professional learning opportunities that we provide for our employees. Our paraeducators certificate program, which is our fundamental course of study, that's the FCS there. This is a state mandate that came down about a year and a half ago that has 2 required components for all K-12 paraeducators in the state. It's 28 hours that our paraeducators are expected to go through coursework. The training targets are defined by the state specifically for our paraeducators. And they've got to finish those hours by June 30th of the year. And so they get a general paraeducator certificate following their completion of that, as well as 70 clock hours within 3 hours of completing that. So it's three years, not 3 hours, three years of completing the 70 clock hours for their fundamental course of study. Oops, I jumped too soon. I need to go back. I'm jumping too soon. Melissa, can you back me up by chance? Sorry. There we go. Thank you. Apologize. Got a little trigger happy there. Our teacher certification partnerships. We have over 30 active partnerships with colleges and universities. Several of them for different reasons. We partner with different universities who offer different endorsement programs. If we're looking specifically to make sure that we can provide some endorsements for our paraeducators or our teachers who are looking for endorsement in ELL, who are looking for an endorsement in special education, we have various programs that we partner with that have specific endorsement opportunities, as well as then offering our partnerships that we have for all of our teacher certification partnerships, or all of our student teachers that we bring on board, and people who want to be library media specialists, content area specific specialists. Again, we've got over 30 partnerships in that area, and that's been great. And those grow every year and they shrink every year, depending on if we have people that are interested in various programs that are within the state or outside the state. Those can grow above 30 or below 30, depending on the year and our employees and what they're looking for and what we're able to offer. Our compliance and management, just quickly on that, that's around our clock hours and training. We offer thousands and thousands of clock hours and training hours collectively throughout any given year. And majority of the trainings we've been offering here, even in the remote environment, we've been having to offer additional trainings because we've filled the capacity in seats. And so that's been great to see that we have additional and more employees wanting to be trained than we were currently anticipating at the beginning. And so more and more staff are having access to trainings, not only around the growth and development in their own current roles, but also growth and development around skills, leadership skills, and potential advancement opportunities as well. And then lastly, our additional PD work, again, really trying to focus not just on teacher and leadership development, but focusing on our classified training programs. We work with our administrative assistants through their professional development. And then of course we support a lot of our labor groups through our regional educational networking partnerships as well, for their opportunities for advancement and growth. Okay, our last team, oops, I just jumped through it again. I apologize. Thank you. Is our legal and labor management team. It's broken up into risk management. So as you can see there, risk management is responsible for all work-related employee injuries that occur within KSD. We work with a third-party claim provider. We monitor the status of those injured workers and do anything and everything when it comes to monitoring payroll and benefits and the impact of that particular claim. We also facilitate all the leave requests for our employees, short-term, long-term, medical leave, childbirth, family member illness, so all of that. And of course, then we support our employees who have diagnosed medical conditions who need ADA accommodations as well. Our Assistant Director of Risk Management, Matt Tardif, spent a good amount of time over this remote working environment supporting our employees that are working at home who had some ADA accommodation needs. And so he's done a really good job working on addressing those needs in a timely manner. We also take care of unemployment claims, which we know have been up this year. I would say the first 4 months of this school year, he spent a majority of his time dealing with unemployment claims, processing and responding to unemployment, and working through all of those pieces. It's very time consuming. Legal and labor. Our legal and labor team right now is a little lean in that we've got Joellen Berdo, who is our Assistant Director of Labor, and myself, who's acting in labor supports for our certificated employee groups, being our principals and our teachers. And then we're currently working through our consulting attorneys, specifically more Curtis Leonard, when we need our legal services met as well in regard to that. We do spend a lot of time now, obviously, more so than in a normal year, negotiating our collective bargaining agreements, well, in this case, MOUs for our reopening or our hybrid learning. And so we're spending a good deal of time these last 3.5 months going through and trying to create and come to an agreement on what it means to go back to in-person learning for all of our labor groups. And so we're actively bargaining, obviously, several MOUs with our labor groups. We also have 5 full reopeners this spring. And so trying to juggle the reopening MOUs as well as 5 full reopeners and a new association coming on board this spring, it's keeping our labor team of 2 very, very, very busy. We, of course, also provide oversight for grievances and arbitrations, again, working with outside legal and during this time. We collaborate with our labor partners on a daily basis with labor disputes or issues or concerns. I know Joellen and I meet with our labor partners formally or informally at least every other week, and that's outside of bargaining. I can say that I meet with a couple different labor groups every single week outside of bargaining. That's just because there's a lot of things going on right now, and we're preparing ourselves for that transition. Of course, when appropriate, we'll develop letters of agreement and develop and administer procedures for non-rep employees as well, which we're starting to work on. So non-rep prof tech employee-based work right now as well. So a lot of things going on in legal and labor. Again, a lot of things going on in HR. And a lot of this work, again, comes back to making sure that our schools are equipped with the high-performing, talented staff, whether that be teaching staff or support staff, to make sure that our students are getting the best opportunity for the highest quality education. And then finally, just kind of bookending the presentation, I started with the HR beliefs. I'm not going to read through all of the HR commitments. I've shared these with you in one of Dr. Watts's weekly board updates, but I do want to highlight just one in each of these areas that is specific and important. When we took our HR community through this work to rebrand who we are and how we show up as an HR community in 2021 and moving forward, it was important that we as a HR community took ownership in our work and that we recommitted ourselves to the importance of this work through an HR lens, through a human lens. And so as you can read through all of these, I just want to highlight the employment support team One of their major commitments is to provide excellent customer support, engaging in continual development of partnerships to maximize employee growth and satisfaction. So that's a mouthful, but what we're saying is that we're going to do everything we can to provide the best customer support, be there when anyone needs us, and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to have a number of partnerships to allow employees to maximize their growth and development personally. Our HR operations team, continuous learning and process improvement. We have embarked on, starting a couple months ago, looking at well over 200 processes that HR owns, both internal and external processes that we are working through to ensure that, one, they make sense, two, they're written down, three, they're memorialized, and then work to educate those that would be accessing those processes. And then, of course, get them in a place online that those people that are internal and external can access those processes, so they feel that they can move through a process seamlessly without asking, where is this process and how do I do this? Our legal and labor thoroughly consider all stakeholders' voice in decision making. Critically important. We've heard from our labor partners over the years, and now, of course, this year being in remote, how important it is to have their voice. And so we try to be very intentional about ensuring that we bring them to the table or engage them in listening sessions, as well as conversations to elicit feedback and voice from them when it comes to decision making. And finally, our program and professional development, committing to supporting career pathways and leadership opportunities and develop and retaining our premier workforce. Again, a really critical piece in our goal number 4 around recruiting, hiring, and developing a premier workforce. That is key work in our program and professional development. So with that, I thank you all for the opportunity to share, and look forward to your questions later on this evening. Thank you.
So again, just want to pause briefly. I know Dr. Behringer shared quite a bit and covered some really key topics with to see if there's any questions before we move on to our final community presentation and then open it up for full discussion. Do you see something in the chat? So let me just open the chat. More thank yous. So I'll echo that. Thank you, Wade. I'm sure we'll have more questions, so we'll continue. And just a moment. Well, I think I can just take it back, right? Yep, I'm good. So, well, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share about the communications and public affairs team. So good evening, Vice President Bettinger, Board Directors, Dr. Watts. The purpose of our KSD communications and public affairs team is to support our district mission, vision, core values, and our strategic goals. I want to first share, like our other communities have, first about who we are. Our dynamic communication and public affairs team, each member of our team has general and specific roles in supporting KSD through telling the stories of our students, their achievements, telling stories about our excellent schools and our outstanding employees. And we serve in various different roles. So as you can see on the screen, we have 8 members, including myself, that are part of our communications and public affairs team. We are dedicated to promoting and supporting our district and advancing our mission. And our team is also committed to working in partnership with all of our schools with our students and our staff to support engagement, two-way communication, and information sharing. Like the rest of our my executive cabinet colleagues this evening, I really also want to take the opportunity to share my appreciation for our diverse, hardworking, and enthusiastic communications team for their passion for strategic communications and their efforts, particularly this year in the pandemic, to support our students and families, our staff, and the community. They've been out supporting through meal service, taking photos, participating in the graduation ceremonies, and actively just doing what they can to make remote learning seem as normal as possible, but also continuing to do their job throughout this year. So what is it that we do to support KSD and teaching and learning? Well, in order to strengthen relationships with our stakeholders, all stakeholders, we facilitate two-way communication. We can't do it by ourselves, so we often are the facilitators of it, and we provide timely, accurate information tailored to the specific needs of each audience that we work with. And there are quite a few audiences that we serve here in the community of KSD. We do strategically plan our own communication efforts and support other administrators in their communications. So our experienced team is committed to providing, as I said, open, accurate, and practical communications. We know that maintaining strong relationships with our stakeholders means that we have to have a strong foundation for our school district. And we're determined to educate all students in our diverse community. So we do a lot of work around diversity, equity, inclusion as a team through professional learning, whether it's book studies or conversations, and it's a primary focus of our team on our own and as individuals, as well as through the work that we do with the district. Our communication plan, the district's strategic communication plan, is prepared in partnership with our superintendent. We are part of the superintendent's community, and Dr. Watts is actively involved in the development of our plan. It is a resource for all Kent School District employees for communicating within the district and beyond. Our plan, which was provided to the board last week, is a tool that helps us effectively communicate with colleagues and share our success stories with our community. But our plan, one of the most critical aspects of our work and our plan is that we must be adaptive and that we need to work collaboratively, because one of the constants in our world and in communications is that everything is always changing. Needs are changing, and we have to be responsive to those needs. We do have staff support for and involvement in our strategic communications, and that involvement is vital. And that's never been more true than this past year during the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm truly grateful for the foundation of engagement and collaboration that our team built with our community leaders, with our district leaders, with our school building leaders, and our office staff, who are highly influential sources of information for our public, for our families and our community, because that was so important during this pandemic. And having those relationships before the pandemic hit us a year ago today, their partnership has been crucial during this time. In our work to develop our 2-year plan, we evaluated our previous goals. We did an extensive SWOT analysis, and we simplified our communications plan to focus on 2 primary objectives. We landed on 7 strategies, and then we outlined key tactics to help us meet our objectives over the next 2 years. Of course, we know these will change and fluctuate to meet our needs, and we're flexible in how we meet those. And we are dedicated in using the district approved tools to provide the timely information to our internal and external audiences in as many languages as possible. We take our responsibility to support and monitor crisis communications at all levels seriously, and we communicate through various methods and channels such as our websites, social media, email, phone calls, texting, e-newsletters, meetings, and our community partnerships. We openly accept constructive feedback from all stakeholders. We review performance analytics frequently, and we prioritize our own professional learning to improve our communication strategies and deliver continuously on our strategies, tactics, and our primary objectives. Now, this year, of course, COVID impacted our communications plan, but much of our work has continued, and it did not change day to day. But we had additional and new work layered on top of what we were already doing. One example is the live streaming. So we were live streaming board meetings prior to COVID. That is true. But we had to figure out a new way in partnership with other communities. All of our work is done in collaboration with all of the communities that have already presented this evening. But we had to figure out a way how to live stream our board meetings remotely, working with you from your homes and we're from our homes, and how could we make that happen? But the technical aspect of accomplishing this last year allowed us to also provide technical support for things like Talk 2020 and other meetings like our listening sessions and other partnerships. And so we're grateful that technical learning has allowed us to continue to do many of our community events. We've also utilized Microsoft Live for our events, and Zoom has expanded our learning opportunities. This year, an additional expansion is our Equity Council. So I do co-facilitate the Equity Council with Dr. Watts, and we expanded our council. We've met 3 of our 4 goals for this year already, and we expanded both in our scope of work and also in numbers. We're at 72 members now. We should be probably to 80 in the next couple of weeks, based on conversations we're having with some new parent members. And we've also expanded through our listening sessions with the Office of the Education of Ombuds and our South King County Discipline Coalition. All of this work is out of the superintendent's office. I provide all of the administrative support, and we have deepened our partnership with the Kent Educators of Color Network, which has been strengthened and continues to be aligned with our work with the Kingmakers of Oakland. And this alignment has not gone unnoticed. Other new and exciting work is our continued deepened partnership with the Kent Schools Foundation. This year, we were able to help them launch a new brand, a new logo, and complete new brand guidelines. In November, we helped shift their focus from an in-person event to an online-only fundraising event, which yielded half of the funds that we normally had raised in the previous year. But by taking this to a social media only fundraising event, we raised about half of what we did the previous year. And that turned into, as you know, over $11,000 going straight back into our classrooms and to our teachers. I am and have been an ex officio board member for the past 3 years on the Kent Schools Foundation. But just last month, I was elected to the secretary of the board for the Kent Schools Foundation, and they changed my position from being an ex officio or non-voting board position to a fully voting board member. And I'm truly grateful for the work our foundation does to support our students and educators across our district, and very excited for the momentum behind the foundation right now. Our Back to School Task Force, this also began last year, and you, the board, approved our reopening plan in August. Now, the task force has continued to meet periodically during remote learning since this school year began. I have facilitated those meetings and coordinated work groups. The most recent accomplishment of the task force was the updating of our revised hybrid plan to ensure all new guidelines were reflected in our plan. The task force has indeed met all OSP requirements at this point. We may continue to gather input and feedback and meet again regarding our fall back to school plan for the 21-22 school year once the Department of Health and OSPI release new guidelines, if they do so, for next school year. But again, we could not appreciate any more the time, efforts, and contributions our task force members have provided this last year. They've been instrumental in helping bring our students back to the building, and we're excited to do so very soon. As part of this ongoing work in reopening, I am continuing to complete our OSPI reports and lead our district-wide COVID communication efforts, and work very closely with our SAOS team and specifically our district COVID coordinator. Now, communicating constantly the change that's happening in this era of COVID-19 is probably the most new and most impacting difference this school year, both in Kent and across the country. From vaccines to childcare and navigating the medical jargon and the constantly changing health guidance to the racial unrest and the nationwide protests calling for an end to racism during the pandemic, communicating this constant change this past year is not something that anyone in school communications was prepared for. Even with my nearly 20 years of communications and public relations experience, extensive crisis communications training, and a master's degree in communication and leadership skills, I myself have never experienced communications like this, not like this past year. This has been a new learning year for me and my team, and I'm so proud of them and how they've stepped up. And I'm appreciative of the support from Dr. Watts, Executive Cabinet, and for the support from my professional learning network from across the state and across the country that I've been able to collaborate with and rely on for support during this time. So you can learn more, and please continue to support us and each other by sharing our district approved communication platforms, understand how we use them, ask questions by checking out our Be in the Know page on our website, our district website. There's also our communications resource page on StaffLink. Both are updated regularly. And all of the links are here. Of course, StaffLink is internal only, so that is for staff, but everything on the external website and the Be in the Know and all of our publications are for our families, for our community members, and we look forward to continuing to partner with our students and our families and our colleagues, as well as our community for a successful and safe rest of our school year. So with that, we are going to pause, I think, just one more time so you can gather your thoughts, questions, comments, and then I will turn it back over to you, Dr. Watts.
Certainly exercise appropriate wait time. Thank you again, Melissa, and to all members of Executive Cabinet, Chief Vela, Chief West, Dr. Harmon, Dr. Behringer. Thank you for the work of your teams and the communities, and certainly the support that we provide for our community, KSD, including our board, our staff, our families, our students. That's duly noted. Director Vengadaslam, thank you for the chat. Noticing some form of a visual that it might be a bit difficult to read as much collaboration as we actually have to provide to make sure the work gets done, and that's a great point. But I think it would be important to visualize that to see how powerful that would be. Thank you.
I think there were some really great examples provided today.
Yes.
Specifically, I guess one example was when HR was discussing the work of working with how the stakeholder voice in the decision making. I was just kind of interested in hearing how the EDLIs are working with organizational effectiveness with HR, because we talk about a lot of these trainings and the board is supposed to vote on, an upcoming vote on another program that the principals and are delivering. So how are those decisions kind of work? How do they work together? Because it involves procurement, it involves decision making from HR, and it involves Chief Vela's area of the EDLIs. I'm sorry, I forgot the technical term you used for the EDLIs.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
So yeah, that would be interesting to understand, like how you collaborate to make a decision, and it's not so simple.
Yeah, if I may, that's a really, I'm glad that that's something that you picked up as a theme from tonight, because that's one really good example, particularly the role of an EDLI. And it's a role that I've actually had before in the Seattle School District, over 100 schools. And it's so critical to communicate, collaborate, but specifically, I would say our EDLIs meet regularly, weekly, if not more, with HR. Dr. Behringer could attest to that. In addition, with the host of questions that come up with them in their professional development and also operations areas, certainly are those, it requires their role to reach out to every single community. And so, I can tell you that they are busy. And so are we, and listening to the constituents that are out there, which is not only the principals, but our families and staff that are out in our buildings, including operations. So yeah, that's just a few things. Dr. Behringer?
Yeah, a great question, Director Vengadaslam. A couple things just to add on what Israel said. We have our executive directors, which our executive directors of learning improvement are a part of, they meet weekly. So executive directors in SOAS as well as OE. So Tashawn, Ben Rarick, Joyce Wilson from HR, Randy Heath from SOAS as well. They meet on a weekly basis to have conversations about lots of different things at the executive director role. In addition to that, I have weekly meetings with both our EDLIs about top of mind things that are HR related that they're working through with their building principals, whether that be professional development needs, whether that be corrective action or plan of support needs. So I meet with the at least 1-on-2 every single week. I also meet with my HR leadership team, Joyce and Jamie Frazier, with Ben Rarick and Lisa. I don't think I meant Lisa. I meant, I meant Lisa.
Tyler.
Yeah, Lisa Tyler. Yeah, every single week as well. And so we talk everything that's HR, finance, interconnected to each other. And so there's a lot of really intentional weekly meetings going on just to make sure that we're catching anything and we're able to cross communicate with each other about lots of different things, whether it be procurement around professional development funds, whether it be whatever it may be. We're able to connect with each other on those. And then I meet weekly with Heidi Maurer, who's the president of KPA, so supporting the principals, then working with the Edleys. And then I meet with my leadership team, so Kathy Landowski, who's the director of program and professional development, on a weekly basis as well. And so there's a lot of interconnectedness. And so there's not a lot of gap in between times of having conversations, intentional conversations with the right people at the table in any given week. It does fill up the calendar, but those are intentional, important conversations to make sure that things aren't falling through the cracks and that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, I do wonder about that. If you were to have that sort of a graphic, would that allow you to kind of see where the gaps are, where are the missing areas of, I guess I'm just a visual person, but I'm sure those discussions are happening, collaboratively, but I wonder if things fall off the radar. I
think that's a great point. I just had a conversation with Danelle with my one-on-one this week, and we were talking about how can we increase even more collaboration amongst the groups and not just executive directors across all of our communities, but how do we get even more intentional? Because at Chiefs, we meet one-on-ones, but as far as how deep do we get into the work of our teams to be able to make sure that we're hitting on those pieces, and so being more intentional. Yeah, I would imagine, being a large organization, there are gaps, but I think we've based on my knowledge from transitioning from one role to another, we've increased the collaboration and intentional meeting time within our communities this last year. Part of that being the remote piece, but I think part of it is just wanting to make sure that we are really intentional about owning all this work together.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. I appreciate the comment, certainly, Dr. Behringer, and as I reflect on whether it's what you see in my weekly or conversations that I have with board members and one-on-one, it is a rarity that I am not in conversation or planning or strategizing or debriefing with members of the team that are here on a weekly basis, and that's by design. Each member of executive cabinet has the opportunity to meet with me at least once per week, and obviously there are many times that we need to meet more frequently. And I would also offer this as one way to think about how do we organize our time and prioritize our time. As incredibly challenging as this time is, we know that not a lot has changed about our work other than how we do it, given the pandemic. But the reality is this work is incredibly challenging. It takes all of us. Sometimes there is a difficult way to make or come to a decision. And I also want to offer this as a strategy that we use. Oftentimes we'll come to a point where we need to use protocols. And those protocols help us to simplify the decision. It doesn't make it easier, but it makes it, or easy, I should say, but it does make it easier. For example, we've talked a great deal about values today, and we'll talk even more about values at our next session. We have a protocol that is simply referred to as getting to yes. You might imagine that with great minds and leaders around the table with competing interests, also shared interests, sometimes it's not easy to get to yes. And so we use a protocol, for example, to talk about organizational values. So if we're making a decision about a program, a practice or a product or a person, does the idea align with our purpose, vision, mission, and strategy? Does it fit within our culture? Those are questions that we pose. And if we say yes, and we move to the next question about resources, for example. Can we realistically execute this idea? Do we have the resources, office space? We're having those conversations as we speak. Remember, as we're planning to return to in-person learning, as well as supporting of learning in central admin. Do we have the resources, office space, technology, or supplies available? Do we have the technical business competencies to make this happen? And without going into further depth, we speak to the time frame. What's our time frame for completing this? Is it doable? What are the costs associated? And what other information is missing in order for us to make this process come to fruition? So the complexities of this work, I think you've seen several examples of how challenging it can be. But to Director Vengadaslam's question, we can make it much easier the more often and more effectively that we communicate with one another. Thank you for bringing that notion to light.
I just want to thank everyone for their presentations this evening. Being new to the district, it's really great to kind of get the background. This is one of the things I had asked for, is like, I don't know who's who or what's what. So it's really good. I took a lot of notes. So I really appreciate, now I know kind of who the go-to people are and what kind of goes on there. So I have questions for every team. I'm just going to submit them on the form just because it's going to be easier, because I want to kind of process, because sometimes when I make notes, like my questions don't make sense until after I think it through. So I will send the form in the form so you can see what all the questions are. But I really do appreciate, and thank you so much for all of you for your presentations. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank Ms. Laramie for facilitating this meeting and getting us through the slides. I think Zoom is doing something weird with slides lately, so thank you for getting us through the slides. I thank everyone for their presentation. Very exciting, Chief West, to hear about all the work. I've remembered over time hearing things that you've brought up, and so it's kind of like seeing all the things I've heard you bring up over time all condensed in one place. So that was exciting to see. My question for you was about, you know, I think at the last time we met, we kind of talked about phonics and the Dyslexia Advisory Committee. So how is their work fitting in with your plan?
So the Dyslexia Advisory Committee, honestly, it's like, not to speak ill of any of the other committees, but just an incredibly impressive group of parents, KSD staff, collaborating, digging into the law, digging into the research, and they are in the process of finalizing their recommendations that we're hoping we can find time to actually share and present to the board. It's truly been a collaborative effort. The parent perspective and the knowledge base and experience that has come from that has been incredible, and I think it has given us a lot of room of how we can really lean into this group to kind of get their expertise and their experience, and partnering that with the expertise and experience of our team to really build and propose a plan that's viable, sustainable, most importantly, implementable, right? And so, you know, that work has really brought to light what I think have been some concerns that we have about program implementation, curriculum alignment, and just really if you look at our data over time, we can start to see where some of the foundational skills like decoding and phonological awareness are critical for us to address in the primary years before our students move into third, fourth, and fifth grade. And our kids are smart. They're used to being able to process and take in a lot of information at the same time from various sources and be able to make meaning from that. But when we are asking to read more and more difficult texts, that's where we start to see some of our students who have those gaps in those basic foundational skills need some extra support. And we're excited. We feel, like I've said before, it kind of feels like the perfect storm with this law, with our curriculum review. And honestly, this time during the pandemic has allowed for us to connect and engage in research and resources at a deeper level. So I guess that's a long way of saying the work is going incredibly well. It's been a great experience, and we look forward to finding time to kind of share those recommendations with the board.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. That's awesome. I had other questions, and I'll write them too, any if I miss. So I tried to write them on the side of my pages. I take lots of notes. So Mr. Vella, where are we with the electric buses?
They are ready to go, Vice President Bettinger. I actually had the opportunity to go on a quick trip, as I mentioned during the presentation. We like to get the buses running, and so yeah, they are on site. I would love to have our board get an opportunity to take a look at those, but they're ready to go. And recall that our board did a great job of listening to why we wanted to move toward this grant. Recall, I think Director Van Godasselen, when we first presented this, it was like, hold on, do we really want to go this route? Because I had the same question, right? Will we still be reimbursed? What does that mean for the future fleet? Those kinds of things. So yeah, you can tell I'm excited about it because it was just amazing from a maintenance standpoint, the less maintenance that it's going to take, not to mention great for our environment.
Cool. Well, thank you. I don't know why, Dr. Harmon, this came across my brain, but remember when you were talking, remember when we met with Sean Christie and we were talking about the potential policy for laptops to go to students as they move on to college? And you said something that triggered that and made me think about that and wondering where we are with that.
So we're actually working through some of the policy pieces around that. So there's a little bit of working through what technically is a gift of public funds, if we give those away. So working through what are some policy suggestions and checks that we can give so that it's not a complete gift in that way, but still meets the need. So it's something that we haven't walked away from. We're just making sure that we're checking the boxes in terms of legal compliance to do what is in the best interest of students. And so it's something that will likely come to the board as part of that policy consideration. Remember I said that at our next one, we're going to bring a series of kind of policy considerations around instructional technology for learning, and that's one of them. So we have some ideas around that. So we are very much looking forward to that. But like I said, we're trying to figure out the nuances of the line of what's a gift of public funds, since levy dollars purchase those devices. Right.
Yeah, but what do we do with those devices when they're done? Do we just throw them away, or do we surplus them?
There's a surplus process for them, and so we're trying to actually put them back in students' hands instead of going through a technical kind of dissolution and surplus process.
Cool. Great. Dr. Behringer. So one thing you were talking about is retention. So what is the retention plan in our district?
So Specifically, the retention plan will be something that'll be shared with our recruitment plan at the end of April. I can speak right now that there are some things that we're looking at doing intentionally, like I mentioned, affinity groups, as far as the helping with not only the onboarding, but the retention of our staff, and not just specific staff, considering staff of color, but all staff, creating outlets and opportunities for staff as they come on board to the Kent School District to feel like they have a sense of belonging. So the idea of onboarding being something that we do every single year from the beginning of their hiring date until when they leave or separate from the district. And it's not just something we do in the first few weeks or first few months of an employment, but throughout the entire year. So looking at touching base with our employees on a quarterly basis to see how they're doing, just checking in on how they're doing on a quarterly basis, see if there's things that we can be doing to help support them in their growth and development, in their sense of belonging to a larger community, as well as to maybe their own community within their building or their team, to see if we can be intentional about creating professional growth or learning opportunities for people to feel like they have an opportunity to advance. So talking about the advancement pathway, something that I've been sharing with and working with Dr. Watts on, is creating additional trainings and opportunities for all employees and various employee groups to be able to start to build the skills that they can see in themselves, and then create a clear pathway of advancement in position so they can see that they're currently in this role and that there is a role that they're interested in, see what it takes to be in that position, and then provide training so people, whether it be interview skills, resume writing, whether it be just building up some of those foundational soft skills that they may need to be able to transition into that. And then just really doing a better job, being more intentional around our stay interview process and our exit interview process. Specifically stay, obviously, when we're talking about retention, is what can we do better? What is it that you need us to do to make sure we're meeting your needs? Because our role in HR is customer service. So we're here to make sure that your needs are being met. And whether we can meet them in HR, or we can help support those needs being met through a different community, or you're working with a supervisor, that's something that we're looking to beef up as well. And so the plan will be shared the end of April is our recruitment and retention sharing plan. But those are kind of the big ticket items, just being better about making sure that people feel like they're a part of our KSD family and that they are supported and that they have intentional outlets and opportunities, not only for their own growth, but their own voice to be heard. So they feel like they can work through whatever concerns or issues or things that they're dealing with as an employee to kind of settle things down so they can feel like I can continue being in this space. I don't need to leave this district because I'm having my needs met and I am being fulfilled through leadership opportunities as well as the love I have for my job.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think I had one last question. So Dr. Watts, you talked about protocols. So how did you get to the protocol you were describing with the team, with your team? Did you sit down and compile it together?
No, this has actually been one of the few that we've used more recently. This has been in place for several years actually, and it really is a very simple 7. Well, there are 7 questions, but it really is, the questions that help drill down to get to yes. And sometimes we need protocols when we have competing, I will say, ideas or interests. And what it does just objectifies the problem and helps us look at it at a closer, clear manner. And we can answer the questions. Ideally, it helps us get to the answer that we're looking for. And so protocols we use often, that's just one example. I know that Chief West and the team in teaching and learning often uses protocols to support teaching and learning. And that's really an example that we use.
So how did you, but I guess my real question is how did the executive cabinet come up with that? Was it something you worked on together, or was it something that one of you brought to the cabinet?
Well, I don't know that So if I remember, and literally this is, I think I want to say it's been about 3 or 4, maybe even longer than that. These are just examples of protocols that others have created, and we use them to support the work like most other individuals would do. It's just a strategy, and it's one that works for us.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you everyone for presenting today. And I look forward, I think this year too, Ms. Laramie, we're going to work with you because one of the board's goals is the getting our communication plan up and running. So thank you everyone for presenting.
Absolutely. Well, I want to
and
share
I
this. Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah.
Vice President Bettinger, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, I just think I just want to leave time for Director Hamada too.
Please, absolutely.
I thought you were going to say something, Dr. Watts. I didn't want to interrupt.
Sorry.
Well, I want to make sure every member of the board had an opportunity to speak, and what I was planning to do was to close us out and bring transition to Thursday. So we still have time, and the floor is yours, Director Hamada.
I put all my questions in the chat as we went along, and then I tried to put them on the link too.
Okay.
Just quickly, I wanted to know, because the parents have been asking me, and it's, I've sat on so many bleachers in my lifetime for my kids. We're involved in everything that I thought it would never end, but It did end. Now it's the grandkids, but I was wondering if we are close to a plan for letting people come and watch our sporting events.
Yes, no, thank you, Director Hamada. Sorry about that. I just was scrolling through the chat just to check and I saw that. So yes, Brian Smith, who's been leading the work initially to get started with the plan that we currently have in place, has been meeting with MPSL representatives from across our region, as well as working with WIA's guidance. So we have that. We believe we are close to at least offering a plan to move forward. Now that plan will have safety precautions and those pieces that we've already been working on, but we have a draft at least that was being voted on, by the way, by the MPSL representatives today. So I'm anxious to meet with them to see what that looks like. But it will be aligned with WIA's guidance as well as our Department of Health.
Okay, I mean, I'd like to show up for some of these things occasionally, and I guess if I show up, I can't go in right now, right?
Well, let's see what the guidance is from our MPSL and see, because we do know what we want to prioritize our families of those athletes, student athletes. And so that was one of the ideas. The other prioritization that came from students, by the way, and Director Bento, I know you often talk about student voice, and we have heard from our students that, hey, our seniors, this is their last year, and we want to prioritize our seniors and their parents and some of the work that we're doing. So yeah, we definitely are weighing the voices and want to make sure that we do it safely as well.
And quickly, do we have an idea? I mean, we're saying we're going back on April 12th with our younger littles, which is great. Do we have a transportation? Have we done a study to see if we have all the routes that we can do with the new parameters at all? Is that available somewhere, Silicate or something like that?
We have been working for quite some time on making sure that we have the safety precautions to start first our IE in-person services for our students. And then with our hybrid plan, they've been working closely with our back to school task force. And so they, I know most recently we've been working on the IE in-person services with the checklist of each and every item that needs to be thought about, when everything down to who those students are, to make sure that we are prepared to get them on the bus safely, as well as get them back on to return them back home. And obviously the parent communication is critical to that. So we can get you, I think if you put that in the questions in the form, specifically what you need, we certainly will get that to you.
And the PPE that we have in every building, do we have a complete inventory on that that's done that I haven't seen?
And that is also part of our checklist in terms of PPE, which is a host of areas, but specifically masks, a number of other things for cleaning and those types of things. All those pieces are part of that task force. And then most recently, I got it right in my mind because we've been meeting for our IE in-person services, which is actually a good prelude into, receiving at some point all of our students at some point. So,
have we given any thought to portable air? What do they call them? Air cleaners or whatever? They're on sale on Costco
yes,
right now.
as a matter of fact, we just had a conversation today about them. The first thing was making sure that our current HVAC systems are working properly, which is part of the report that we sent.
Yep.
And that includes our air intake systems in all those processes, and that we get the right type of filter in each one of our areas that we have. And so I think that's first and foremost. And then we look at, so what I'm getting at is our air intake and circulation working appropriately so that if an air, a portable air system is needed, that it's actually doing it support rather than harm, if that makes sense. Because it can do that. It really depends on the area or space that we're looking at. As I mentioned earlier, it's critical that we look at the learning environment HVAC system, as well as we bring students back and our staff, by the way, what are those classrooms need to look like and where do those air systems need to be? So we're prepared to provide whatever we need to help support that learning environment and teaching.
Yeah, that raises a question too. Are we going to be having vaccination clinics or anything for our teachers? I'll be honest, I struggled getting through the Kaiser Permanente thing, so I finally just got my vaccination through the ShoWare Center. Had something. So,
Vice President Bedger, that is an excellent question, and I do want us to be mindful of the fact that we are still in the bargaining process and want to respect that. So decisions that once they are an MOU is reached and ratified, we'll certainly be able to speak more intelligently about what is happening, but know that the sentiments that you've expressed are all part of the discussions that are taking place literally hours ago as we speak. So I do want to respect that process. But thank you, and we will certainly follow up once we're able to do so. That said, I do want to take just a moment once again to say thank you to each and every member of our school board, to our team, executive cabinet members, to those who have live streamed and watched and observed. This is the opportunity for us to continue showcasing our values. And I shared with you one of the first part of the protocol is organizational values. And this is a prelude to Thursday's session. If you've ever heard of two authors who are widely known for their work and research on leadership, one of their more seminal works is called Leadership Challenge, the Leadership Challenge by authors last name Kouzes and Posner. And as we reflect on this work, I just want to identify the 5 core values that they express in their work. One is to encourage the heart. Leaders encourage the heart and the emotion of this work. Leaders also enable others to act. So they find a way to help people get to whatever it is that they need to go build bridges or build a sense of belonging or consensus. The third is to challenge the process. According to Kouzes and Posner, excellent leaders find a way to challenge the status quo. When things have been done just because it's always been done that way, there is a good way of thinking that we might be able to challenge that to see if we can actually improve our outcomes. The second is inspire a shared vision. And that's simply put, we all know that we can work more effectively and become more powerful outcomes when we do this work together. But the number one value that's espoused by Kouzes and Posner is 3 words, and it's model the way. And it's based certainly on values. So how do we ensure that we model the way? Well, we model the way, first of all, by expressing what it is that's important to us. And so I'm going to respectfully request that Vice President Bettinger doesn't answer this question because I know she knows the answer. But there is an organization that has a statement, and the statement, it follows a value. And in a value, this organization has been widely known as being called the happiest place on earth. That value is defined as, if this way that we view ourselves and this level of importance, if this were no longer important 100 years from now, would we still believe it was important for our organization? If the answer is yes, then they continue with that value statement. Another test question is, if tomorrow the entire world decided that this value was no longer important, would we as an organization still believe that this was important for us, for our community? If the answer is yes, then that is truly something we value. Well, the company is Disney, and Disneyland is known as the happiest place on earth. That is the value that they have espoused, and that's one of the reasons why it has done so well. Our goal is to make sure that we, as individuals and as a team, that we interrogate the reality of our own value system. What is it that's important to us? That's so important, even if it changed 100 years from now, or even if the world suddenly said that's no longer important to us, would it still be a value that we espouse in Kent School District as leaders? So we'll use that theme as part of our next work together, and I look forward to that. But I wanted to set the table for our next work, and thank you for your time and your leadership. And I'll turn it back over to Vice President Bettinger for adjournment.
Again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight and presenting. I appreciate it. And with that, I will close the meeting. It is 8:33 p.m. and I will see everybody on Thursday.
Yes.
Have a great day tomorrow.
You too.